In section 9.3a, it's called factoring trinomials in the form of x squared plus bx plus c. So this is now the third type of factoring. And you will only use this type of factoring if there are three terms. That's why it's called factoring trinomials, tri meaning three. So there's going to be three terms, and it has to be in this form of x squared plus bx plus c. In other words, there has to be a term that's an x squared with no number in front of it, and then there has to be another term that just has an x, and another term that just has a number. And I'll show you an example of how it works. Easiest example I have, x squared plus 5x plus 6. So you see that it is a trinomial, there are three terms, and it is in this form, with a squared term, and then an x term, and then a number. So when you have a trinomial and you're factoring it, it's going to factor always into two binomials. So I make the parentheses set up to have two binomials. And when you're factoring these first two terms have to multiply together to equal this. So that's why I put an x and an x there in those spots. X times x will give you this first term. And what I'm doing is unfoiling right now. In Chapter 8, you learned how to FOIL, how to multiply two binomials together. We are taking the trinomial and unfoiling it, and then we'll check it by foiling it back together. So the rest of this factoring is what I call product and sum. And every time when you're doing these, you're going to be looking for two numbers. I'm going to put the P here and the S here. Two numbers whose product is 6, and those same two numbers have to have a sum of 5. So the product is always the last term, and the sum is the middle term. So I'm looking for two numbers. You start with the product, and you think, all right, what multiplies together to make 6? 1 times 6 does, but if I add it 1 plus 6, I don't get 5. So that's not the one I want. What else multiplies to be 6? 2 times 3 multiplies to be 6, and if I add those together, I do get 5. So these are the two numbers I want, 2 and 3, because they multiply together to be 6, and they add together to be 5. So I will put a plus 2 here and a plus 3 here. And then this will be my answer. Now, go back and think about what you did in Chapter 8 when you had two binomials and you were FOILing, multiplying them together. So you're distributing the first one twice. So that would be x squared plus 3x, and then the second one twice. So that's plus 2x plus, we're multiplying when we're distributing, plus 6. We add the middle two terms together, get x squared plus 5x plus 6. That's what we started with, and that's what I just checked to see we did right. This is our answer. So when it says to factor it, your answer will have two binomials and parentheses around each one. Okay, we're going to do a lot. So this is the second example. Again, it's a trinomial. There are three terms, so I'm going to be factoring it into two binomials. And also remember that the directions will say factor. It'll just say factor. You're just going to have to know that right now you're using the third type of factoring, which is factoring a trinomial. And when we factor a trinomial, we always look for the product and the sum of two numbers. So we're looking for the product. the two numbers' product is 8, and their sum is the middle term. Their sum is 6. They have to multiply to be 8, and they have to add together to be 6. So I think of all the factors of 8. 1 times 8, okay, that's not going to add together to be 6. 2 times 4, yeah, those will definitely add together. So the first part of this is always this one times this one has to equal that. So x times x. The second part, I'm using the numbers 2 and 4. Plus 2 plus 4, and that one's done. That one has been factored. Okay, once again, we're going to factor this third one. Again, it's a trinomial. Again, it will factor into two binomials, and it will start with x. X times x will be this first term. Now, this time, there's a minus right here. So when I do the product and the sum, the product means it's going to multiply together to be the last one. Multiplies to be positive 16. The sum means when I add the two numbers together, they're going to add to be negative 10. So this time, they're adding to be a negative number. So when I start going through my numbers, 1 times 16, well, 1 times 16 gives 16. One of them, at some point you have to realize that in order to get a negative here, we're going to have negatives here. Like negative 1 times negative 16 will give me a positive 16. And if you add it together, it gives a negative 17. Okay, so it's not the one we're looking for. We go on to the next one. Negative 2 times negative 8. That would, when I add them together, negative 2 plus negative 8, that does give negative 10. So I needed to know that it's going to have to multiply to be a positive. So if they're both negative, it will give me a positive. And if they're both negative, it will give me a negative 10. So minus 2 and minus 8 is the answer to that one. Okay, this next example is almost like the last one. Again, it's a trinomial. It's going to factor into two binomials. This time it's going to be c and c that multiply together to get the c squared. Then this is my product, this is my sum. I need two numbers that multiply together to be 2, positive 2. And when you add them, and the product is multiply, product is multiply, sum is adding. So multiplying to be positive 2 and adding to be negative 3. This tells me again that these two have to be negative. Negative 2 times negative 1 multiplies to be positive 2. Negative 2 plus negative 1 adds to be negative 3. So that one works just like this. In this example, I've changed it. We haven't had one like this yet, where this, I have a plus here and then a minus. So it changes it slightly. Again, it's going to multiply to two binomials, x and x. The middle term is the sum. The last one is the product. So I have two numbers. This time they're going to multiply to be negative 12. And they're going to add to be, it just says x here, so that means it's going to add to be 1. If it just says x, then it's 1x. So, again, you could start, if you don't know where to start at all, start by just multiplying two numbers together. 1 times 12. So in order to get negative 12, one of them has to be negative, either the first one or the second one. If I were to add those two together, negative 1 plus 12, I get 11, nowhere near this 1. If I was to use 1 times negative 12, that also multiplies to be negative 12. 1 plus negative 12 gives me negative 11. No good. 2 times 6. One of them would have to be negative. Try the negative 2. Negative 2 plus 6 would give me positive 4. No good. 2 times negative 6 is 2 plus negative 6 would give me negative 4. No good. Now I'm going to 3. So notice I started with 1, then 2, then 3. 1 has to be negative. Negative 3 times 4. If I added them, negative 3 plus 4, I would get positive 1. So this is the one I need, where I have a negative 3 and a positive 4. Let's just FOIL this one out so you can prove to yourself that it works. So to FOIL it out, we're going to go x times x squared. So you're taking this first one and distributing it twice, plus 4x. Then you're taking this second one and distributing it twice, minus 3x minus 12. Combine the middle terms. X squared, 4x minus 3x is x, minus 12. This is what we started with, so this is our answer. The answer is x minus 3, x plus 4. Okay, the next example, this is the first time I've given you one where both of these are negative. Once again, the middle one is the sum, the last one is the product. It multiplies where these are both x. And let's do the product and the sum. This time it multiplies to be negative 18, adds to be negative 7. So it has to come out negative, so one of the numbers is negative. Negative 1 times 18, that's going to give us 17. So 1 and 18 aren't going to help us. 2 times 9. Okay, so one of them has to be negative. If it was negative 2 plus 9, that would give me positive 7. I need negative 7. So 2 times negative 9 gives me 2 plus negative 9 gives me negative 7. So these are my two numbers, plus 2 and minus 9. Now you need to try some on your own. If you're skipping this part, don't. Just do it. So put it on pause and see if you can get all the way through this problem. So I always start by putting parentheses, putting in x and x, realizing this is the sum, this is the product. They have to multiply to be 24, add to be 11. 8 times 3, 8 plus 3, that's plus 8, plus 3. That one's done. Number 2. N squared plus 13n minus 48. It's going to put into two parentheses, so put it on pause and do it, and then come back. N, this is the sum, this is the product. Has to multiply to be negative 48, add to be 13. So you just have to try experimenting with it. And it might take, this one might take a little longer. It may have taken you longer. It was 1 times 48, 2 times 24, 3 times 16. That actually will work. One of them has to be negative, and it's going to be the 3, because negative 3 plus 16 will give a positive 13. So that's minus 3 and plus 16. There's your answer. Okay, number 3, go ahead and do it. It comes out to be P, P, this is sum, this is product, multiplies to be negative 35, adds to be negative 2, it's going to be 7 times 5, and it's going to be negative 7 plus 5 to get the negative 2. So minus 7 plus 5. Now number 4, when I give you this problem, I'm giving it to you in the wrong order. So in order to do it, you just have to rearrange it first. It has to start with the a squared, then it has to have the a term, then the 72. So it's just a matter of rearranging. Then we know we're going to have a, sum, and product. As the numbers get bigger, it takes a little longer to figure out. It has to multiply to be 72. This one ends up being 3 times 24, 3 plus 24, so plus 3 plus 24.